Hi everybody, it's Kerrie here at the North East Autism Society, and it's our Back to School series. And I'm talking today with Kieran, the Autistic Advocate, who is going to tell us his personal insight into his children returning to school and also some things that we can think about from a school perspective. So Kieran, just if people haven't seen you before, would you be able to just tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. As Kerrie said, my name's Kieran, and I'm a consultant, blogger, and trainer at the autisticadvocate.com. And I am a parent of 3 children, 2 of whom are diagnosed autistic, and I was diagnosed autistic myself about 20 years ago.
Okay. So the reason I've kind of got Kieran on board is because he can give his insight not just as a parent but also as an autistic adult about the topic really of returning to school. Kieran, I know a lot of families are already contacting us saying that they're feeling really anxious about the transition back to school, and how is the child or young person going to manage after such a long period out of school. So many different changes have occurred over the last kind of 6 months, you know, that's turned everybody's world upside down, really, hasn't it? So I suppose the first question would be, how are you feeling as a parent around the transition back for your children?
Anxious on multiple levels. I'm, without getting too political, I'm anxious about how things have been handled from the government kind of end of things. I have faith in my children's schools that they are going to do their utmost and their best to keep things safe, but I don't have much faith in people above them in keeping my children safe. You know, we're talking about bubbles in, I don't know, secondary schools that have got 300 children in them. That's not a bubble, that's a year group, you know. So it's kind of, a lot of the language that's being floated around is very kind of politicized and trying to encourage people to do things that they are kind of realistically nervous about. And then from my children's kind of perspective, my concerns about my children's concerns kind of thing is that, you know, my children are worried about the same things that I am. They're worried about the virus. They're worried about the changes that have come in place. They're worried about things not being explained to them or them not understanding what's going to go on. They're worried about being maybe pushed into things that they're not quite ready to be doing, and all of those kind of things. And they're also worried about the amount of time they've missed and about, you know, we've got this notion of needing to catch up, and I don't think that's the right thing to be doing. I think we should just be drawing a line under it and picking up wherever everybody is, you know, and that needs to be a very individual thing. And I think from talking to my kids, which I do a lot, these are the kind of themes that they're worried about as well. So it's, no matter what age we are, we all seem to have the same concerns.
Definitely, yeah. And I suppose there is that pressure as well for parents to get their children back into school and get them in a routine, but obviously we know for autistic children, young people, that is going to be amplified on every level. So I suppose, what could schools do, Kieran, to support parents with that transition back to school?
Yeah, there's a huge onus at the minute on parents preparing their children, but that involves a lot of communication with school and parents knowing what schools are going to be doing as well. And if that communication isn't there, that's a really difficult thing. You can only prepare your child so much if you haven't got any of the relevant information. So that communication from schools with parents needs to be top notch, absolutely top notch. There can't be too much information about what's going to happen. And I know it's difficult because from the school's perspective, government guidelines are changing every day. Things are, you know, it's constantly changing. And I know that lots of schools are struggling with that as well. So but everybody's struggling. So we need to all be realistic with our struggles and be very open and honest about that, I think. So I think there needs to be a little bit of reducing the professional veil and just being very honest with parents and communicating the changes that are happening. I mean, I've made some notes kind of before because I knew we were going to be talking about some of the kind of different strategies that schools could use to support parents and support their children. And it's things like simple things like pick up your phone and walk through the school, video it, so that from the front door all the way to the fire exit, you know, in the kitchen, the dining hall, the classrooms, the playground, so that the children can see that school looks exactly the same, but there are differences within the school, within maybe the layout or where they can go and where they can't go. And having that written down step by step, explicit information. And again, you know, it's like parents will then know what their child will need and what they won't need. But if the school can give over all that information, you can answer questions that the children might have that, you know, you don't know that they're going to ask. So descriptions of the new processes, for example, my boys' school, they go to a middle school in Northumberland, so their different year groups are going to be coming in different entrances. They're going to be staying in one classroom all the time. You know, they're going to be eating their lunch in their classroom. They're going to be allowed out on the playground at different times. But it even comes down to things like, when can I go to the toilet? You know, can I just get up and go as I normally would, or do I need to wait for a specific time? And you know, and so there's so much change there and so many potential questions. And I think schools have to be flexible, absolutely flexible, because the children that are, all children coming back to school are going to be anxious. Everyone's going to be anxious. Even the ones that carried on going to school are still going to be anxious, because there's going to be a lot of children around again, and there's going to be an element of normality. But for our autistic children, you know, that anxiety is going to be straight through the roof. So, you know, so sensory sensitivities are going to be heightened. They're going to be tired out much more quickly. They're going to need more slow and precise information in order for that to be able to process. So, you know, so being flexible about that, and also being flexible about the fact that if children, you know, if they're expected to come in full time for the first day, that might be too much.
Yeah.
You know, it might be that you need a couple of weeks of just, you know, increasing the time. Start off a 10-minute visit, and then a half-hour visit, and then an hour, and then build it up from there. And be prepared to walk it back as well, because whatever baby steps you think you're taking, sometimes those baby steps are still too big. You know, so yeah, and it is just about flexibility and understanding anxiety, and seeing that, you know, all our children have been traumatized over the last 6 months. All of us have been traumatized over the last 6 months. And it's recognizing that, and also recognizing that trauma presents very differently in autistic children than it does for non-autistic kids. So it's, you know, so much, and that's applying so much pressure to teachers who already have so much pressure applied to them. But in the long run, it's going to make everybody's life that bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely, Kieran. And I think it's about them very specific needs as well, isn't it? Rather than not taking a blanket approach, because that will not work.
Absolutely.
I was talking to one young person the other day who is really stressed. His main stressor about going back to school out of everything is one of his key workers usually gets his lunch for him from the dinner hall and brings it to his safe space during lunch, because he can't cope with the noise of the dining room and the, you know, all the other sensory stuff that's going on. And that's his main worry going back to school, is, will my teacher be available to pick my lunch up, you know? So I think it's, if we can kind of work on with individuals and work out what things, you know, what things are important to them, because what worries us will be very different to what worries another person.
Absolutely. And lots of children won't even be able to voice those worries and voice those concerns like that child has there. So, you know, so there's a lot of, we need to rely on the relationships that we have with the children, and which is really difficult for those kids that are transitioning to new schools as well. I mean, that's a whole other subject. But those relationships, listening to teachers, listening to really listening to parents, you know, parents who know their kids best, who know what their kids' worries and fears probably are better than anybody. Teachers accessing the right information when it comes to autistic children, and, you know, looking for that inside knowledge and all of those things, so that they can preempt maybe some of the fears and things that are there that parents might not be able to pick up on. And also, you know, this is one of the biggest things as well, is, you know, I hark on about alexithymia all the time, but it is present in a lot of autistic people. So not being able to recognize your emotions, not being able to understand what your body is telling you at any kind of a given moment about how you're feeling. And you might have an autistic child that looks absolutely happy in the middle of all this mess and chaos and misunderstanding, and they might not be. Just because they look that way might not mean that they are. And it's really, really, really important that these things are kind of recognized. And again, it's putting a lot of pressure on teachers. But at the end of the day, we have inclusion policies for a reason. And those inclusion policies are there to say, you know, that children who have needs that aren't met by mainstream schooling are still allowed to access mainstream school, and we will try and meet their needs. So it's, you know, as harsh as this may sound, this is people's lives we're talking about. This is children's lives and mental health that need supported through this. And if that needs to be done in a different way, it needs to be done.
Absolutely. So flexibility is the key.
Absolutely.
Kieran, thank you so much for talking to us about that subject. It's been really insightful, and I'm sure people will get a lot of information from that. If people do watch this video, if you've got any comments, questions, just pop them in the box below and we'll try and get back to you. Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.